Your next Red Talk speaker is Angie Caron. She's a Métis woman from Saskatoon and is a proud descendant of the historic Métis community of Round Prairie. Angie is currently the principal of Westmount Community School in Saskatoon, and prior to her current role, she spent 2 years seconded from Saskatoon Public Schools to the Ministry of Education to provide Métis perspective in the education sector planning. Angie spent the majority of her career working in community schools, and she is here to tell you all about it. Please welcome kindly to the stage, Angie Caron.
Tanche Kiowawanush, Angie Caron Dishinakeshan, Amachifnia. It's so wonderful to be here today. Kischi Marcy to Chris Scribe and the organizing committee who invited me to come and share a little bit of what I've learned along the way in my journey. And so hopefully I'll share some words that will be helpful to some people and will resonate with you. So I'm not sure these, oh, there we go. So I guess I'm coming today with a perspective that might be unique in the room. As I have attended many of the sessions, it's been wonderful to learn from so many different people. What I've learned along the way is that often I'm in a room where I'm the lone Métis voice. That seems to be I'm not that in this room today, but that has kind of been my journey. And so with it has come some building of resilience. So when I went home last night from the conference, I had a plan in my mind, but somehow it changed yesterday evening. And I decided that it was important to bring my ancestors along with me. They're always with me, but I wanted you to meet them. And so one of the things that I realized was it was really good to have a PowerPoint because just as my wonderful ancestors did in the Battle of Batoche, they created diversions. That's what this is. It's a diversion so that you're looking at that and not at me. So that is my diversion. So who am I? Well, I am Angie. I am the daughter of Ken Caron and of Stella Caron, who was Stella Weeb. So I listened to Duta yesterday, and he talked about his heritage and how he's got a very mixed heritage. I too have a very mixed heritage. I honor my mother's heritage, her German heritage, but that's not who I am. I am a Michif. I've always been a Michif. I have that heritage, that German heritage, but how I've always seen myself is as a Michif. So lots of times when I talk to people, they say, oh, yeah, you're Métis. So that means you're half this and you're half that. And that's always interesting to me how that's viewed. Because although I have ancestry from different nations, I am 100% Michif. I have a culture, I have a language. It would be interesting for somebody to say to me, you're part this and you're part that. I'd like them to tell me which part of me is Michif or which part of me is Métis and which isn't. Because I can't figure that out. That's not who I am. So I like to clear that up a little bit at front, kind of the perspective, the place that I'm coming from. And so I've had an opportunity in my very short journey in education to be in a variety of roles. And one of the roles that I had was I was the consultant for First Nations and Métis education with Saskatoon Public Schools. And in that role, it was often my job to try and help people understand the why. Why do we include Métis, First Nations perspectives in our curriculum, in our classrooms in this province? that was often the hardest place to be, right? Because people, if they can't understand the why, we're never going to get to the how. So I told a story, and it seemed to be the story that resonated with people and it helped them to understand. Because for me, that importance of story, that's the example of who we are and how we learn and how we share who we are. So here's my short story. As I said, I have a mother who comes from another land. She comes from Germany. If my mom's relatives, my mom, she lost her language, she lost her cultural traditions, she lost all of those things. She could get on a plane, she could head back to Germany, she could learn all those things, and she could come back here and share all of that with her family and her friends and all the people that she knows. My dad, he's a Michif. His culture, his language lives right here. It was born here, and it lives here. So he can't go to Michif land to get that, because that exists right here. So that if our cultures don't live in the curriculum of the place where they were born, where else will they? That was always the message that I gave to people, and for some reason it resonated with them, so I was always glad for that, because then we could get to the how. So these lovely folks that I brought along with me here today, these are my grandmothers, and my aunts and my uncles and my dad. So on the far left, that's my great-grandmother, Mathilde Trottier, and she is the daughter of Charles Trottier, who was one of the leaders in the events of 1885 at Batoche. So I come from a very long line of Michifs who have been here for a while, for quite a while. Those other folks, it's my grandmother, my grandfather, my dad, and my aunts and uncles. When I come to speak at anything, it's always them that I think about, and it's always them that I feel I'm responsible to. They paved a way for me. They made a place for me. And so I always hope that when I leave whatever place I'm speaking at, that I'll leave here knowing that, or hoping that, my words and my actions will make them proud. So I came to education quite late. I was 29 when I entered university. I had never been to the university. Nobody in my family had ever graduated from university. There was a lovely lady at the Suntep Saskatoon office. Her name is Ruth Daniels. And she was a friend of our family's. And she kept saying to my mom, why doesn't she come to Suntep? And my mom kept saying to me, why don't you go to Suntep? And I said, I don't think I even want to be a teacher. So she said, well, what have you got to lose? Give it a try. So I moved home. My parents couldn't afford to help me with school, but they said to me, you know what, we can give you a place to live while you're going to university. So that'll be our contribution. So at 29 years old, I moved home. Lived with my parents. And at first I thought, whoa, it's kind of a step backwards. But I can't tell you how grateful I am for that opportunity. So as I'm at Suntep, within the first week, I realized I was in the place that I belonged. That sense of belonging was nurtured there because it was a Métis-specific education program. So that importance of having education that's specific to who we are can never be emphasized enough. So as I'm going to school, I'm learning some things in my classes. And I'm coming home and I'm discussing them with my dad. And I remember the day he said to me, they're teaching about us at university? So university to my dad was this big, ominous place that he had never been either, but it was someplace really important. So he was very amazed that they were teaching about us, the Michif, the Métis people at university. So we had lots of great conversations throughout my time at SUNTEP. On the day that I graduated, my mom said to me, you know, you've given your dad the greatest gift that you could ever give him. And I said, oh, yeah, because I actually made it. We weren't all sure I would, but I graduated. So that was the greatest gift. And she said, no. She said that you gave him the gift of being proud of who he is. He didn't have that before. So I'm forever grateful to SUNTEP. So I found this picture along the way in many of my journeys. A wonderful man named Murray Hamilton, who was one of the coordinators of SUNTEP, he always brought forth things like this and helped us to really think critically about what does Métis education mean? What is it? And so to me, this was a really good symbol. It is about education, not about annihilation. It's not about the annihilation or the dismissing of our language and our cultural ways. It's about that is the education. That those perspectives, the way that we learn, that is the education. So I feel always, too, a huge responsibility to represent that SUNTEP family well. I always get a little bit more nervous when my SUNTEP brothers and sisters are in the crowd because I think, okay, I hope I'm going to live up to the expectations that we all have of each other. So I did have that support of a Métis-specific program and the people that are associated with it. And I always hope that, yes, I will represent their investment in me very well. So my journey has been, this is year 18 of my career. And I've done a lot of things in my career. I started as a classroom teacher at Caswell Community School. And it was like when I decided to leave there after 6 years, it was a very tearful goodbye because I became a part of that community. I loved those kids like they were mine. And families, there was lots of great connections. It was interesting, one of the principals that I was teaching with at that time, he said to me, you know, Angie, I don't know what it is, but he said, every time you teach grade 4, the Métis population in grade 5 goes up. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't think they're any different kids. It's just the matter of, I think, knowing that there was somebody there who was very proud of being Métis. It made other kids come to me and say, you know, Miss Caron, I'm Métis too. And so I was always very cognizant of my role as that person in the classroom. I've been a vice principal, I've been a consultant, I've been a student support teacher. Most recently, I had a little bit of a journey with the Ministry of Education. I was asked to go there and provide Métis perspective in the education sector planning. So imagine, there I was, little Round Prairie Métis girl from Saskatoon, walking into this room of all the directors of education in the province, the big bosses, and little old me. And I'm walking in there and I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing here? And what do I have to contribute to this place? And then I realized that was the first time that I knew for certain that strong foundation of a cultural identity and knowing who I was as a Michif woman was the thing that allowed me. The 2 degrees that I had at this point didn't matter. What mattered was that I could walk into that room knowing who I was. That was the first time I saw the proof that is important, that who we are as people comes first. And so I realized that's what allowed me to walk in here and be able to talk. I was literally a half an hour into the first meeting, and all of a sudden I had to put up my hand, and I thought, oh boy, here we go. So for 2 years, I spent my time, I felt like I needed to get one of those little things that you use at auctions that you raise up for your bid. I felt like I needed to get one of those to say, don't forget about the Métis. Don't forget about the Métis. That was my role for 2 years. I kept having to remind them that we were here, that our kids were in the provincial education system, that our parents were stakeholders in it, that we as Métis people should have voice in it. I had to fight for that voice, and it was really hard, but it did teach me to be resilient. So after 2 years, I decided, okay, I've fought the good fight. I've done my best. It's time to go back to the place that I love. And so the place that I love is school. I love being in a school. So I applied for a principalship with Saskatoon Public, and I thought, gee, I wonder if they'll even think I'm ready for this. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I felt like it was the next step in the journey. So I was made principal at Westmount Community School. What a gift. Westmount Community School in Saskatoon Public Schools has the only Métis cultural program that exists in our school division. And we are so fortunate at Westmount Community School to have families, community, friends. We have so many people who are willing to support the work that we do there. This year will be our second annual Métis Day of Learning. We have partnerships with Comfy and with Gabriel Dumont Institute that support our work. And we also have Métis community friends that continue to come alongside us and support our work at Westmount. So these pictures, the one on the left is of our community dance Monday nights for 16 weeks. We have had Wilford Burton come and join us, and just out of the goodness of his heart, he's taught us some of the Métis dances. He's taught us to jig. He's taught us to do some of the squares. And we have a really good time. It's lots of fun. We've got little kids dancing with older people. We got, husbands and wives. We've got all kinds of people that come. And so that's been a really great sense of community. On the right, those are two of our kids at the Sweetheart Dance that we just had in February, where we brought our community together to celebrate and to just enjoy the love that exists at Westmount School. So we're fortunate because we also have people who are generous with their time and with their knowledge. And so we understand the importance of that language, and that being the foundation of who we are. And so we're fortunate because Norman Fleury is working at the university here in Saskatoon, and so he is generous with his time and his knowledge, and he helps us learn Michif. So hopefully this morning when I introduced myself, I see Norman in the crowd. Hopefully I did okay. In that program, we've had to, I guess I'll call it recreate or create the Red River Cartwheel, because there was no template for this work. We had to start from the beginning and figure out what does Michif language learning look like in a school that has all kinds of cultures and folks there, and how do we make that a part of our learning? So the people that exist in Westmount School is a very diverse population. I'll tell you, it really warms your heart when you see people from other countries wearing hijabs and all kinds of different cultures, and they're standing up and they're singing, "Proud to be Métis." That sure warms your heart. Not something I thought I would see in my lifetime, but it happens every day at Westmount School. So these little people, we're very proud of them. They're called Le Petit Danseur de la Prairie. It's our little Métis, our Prairie Steppers. It's our dance group at Westmount. And they are such great ambassadors for our school and for our community. And so they recently performed on Telemiracle. So some of it is just what does the environment look like in a Métis education place? So we have elders who come and they spend time with us and help us create that environment. It's about how do we treat our guests. It's about who are we called in our school? So when I came to Westmount, I decided that I had a chance to make a fresh start and I could be whoever I wanted to be. And so I said to the students, I said, I'm okay with a lot of things in terms of what you're gonna call me. And one of the things I said to them was, if you feel comfortable calling me Miss Angie, that's great. If I start to remind you of one of your crazy aunties, feel free to call me Auntie Angie. So in our school, we have mushroom, we have aunties, we have cookums, we have all kinds of people. It's about family there. So here's a picture of one of our elders that comes to visit us a lot. This is Senator Nora Cummings. And she also helps us. She's one of the Round Prairie Métis as well, so we are kindred spirits, her and I. So the importance of how do we interact with elders in our place? Well, the best people to ask are them. How do they see themselves in our learning? So we're very fortunate. We have lots of good friends at Westmount that come and help us out and create this place that is a Métis cultural program, a space for that to exist. So the intergenerational learning piece is a huge part of it. We are very fortunate that in many ways, I see our kids with talents that you don't see by assessing them on a reading score or a math test. I see talents, I see literacies. So one of the big things was, I saw a young man at our Sweetheart Downs who struggles a lot in the classroom. But man, did he shine at the Sweetheart Downs, because he was that guy that was going around to the elders and he was getting them tea and he was making sure his friends gave up their seats to the elders, and nobody told him to do this. This was just natural in him. He's gifted too. It's just not always the setting for us to be able to see that. So there are many things. There's a sense of urgency. We know it. I've learned about voice. I've learned about having courage to be who I am and to share that with others. I've learned about being resilient because it's not going to get through the first time. And I've learned about advocacy. And so I hope that today I've left you with something that you can use going forward. And I thank you very much, Kishchi Marcy, for listening to me today.